All right. Hey there, Knicks fans. How you doing? It is your boy, Jonathan Macri, with you for, I guess, something that's gonna be a semi-regular occurrence here as the summer gets going. You gotta keep the. See, I can't even get my words out. I'm trying to say, you got to keep it fresh. You can't get too rusty. I can't get to next season's post game live streams and be like, oh my god, I forgot what I'm doing here. Forgot how to do one of these things. So yeah, we're gonna several of us from Knicks Film School are gonna be getting on in front of the old microphone, in front of the old camera, to go live at night, or I guess at other times potentially throughout the summer, for a variety of reasons. We got Chris Persianen doing the draft stuff. We're of course going to have a lot of Jeremy Cohen doing the cap stuff. Maybe a couple other friends popping in here to do what they do, and we got me here to talk about whatever it is that you want to talk about on this late May evening, as we prepare for Memorial Day weekend and get ready for a finals that seemed like it was going to be a sure thing 24 hours ago, and now has been, thrown into a little bit of doubt. We'll see how that goes. I don't know if we're going to talk about that at all tonight. But yeah, I mean, I think where we're at right now in the offseason, it still feels like I feel like after the finals ends, which obviously we're, probably 2-3 weeks, 2.5, 3 weeks away from that taking place. There's a little bit of a lull, and then we'll start to get some of the rumors in full swing. A couple weeks ahead of the draft, week or two ahead of the draft. Right there's that. It's weird because now the finals ends, and if it's a 7-game series, you get like less than a week between the end of the finals and draft night. So, or maybe it is exactly a week, something like that. Whatever the case may be. But you don't get a lot of time. It feels like there used to be more time, and now you don't get time. And obviously, the draft is a big one. And I think the draft is going to be a big one this year because, well, moves typically get made on draft night. And I think last summer may have thrown us off the scent a little bit for kind of how things usually go in the NBA, because the Donovan Mitchell thing didn't really start to take flight until, I guess, I don't know. We were into July already, for sure. We were definitely into July. And then the Durant thing that in a way sort of lasted most of the summer too. Most of the time though, feels like teams kind of know what's up. And this summer it's obviously a little bit different because I think a lot of things hinge on a few teams and a few players, if you want to get down to it. I mean, whether you're all in on the idea of trading for Joel Embiid, or you think it's an absolute pipe dream, or you think it's a horrible idea, I do think a lot of eyes will be on James Harden in Philadelphia and Houston and what they decide to do. And Jeremy and I talked about it a little bit on this week's pod about how it's always, when you're dealing with a team and an organization and a player even that is not necessarily a rational actor, kind of makes everything a little bit more interesting. And then you got all your usual stuff, like, the Portland thing got more interesting once they got the third pick. I mean, I think people always have an eye on Bradley Beal in Washington. They reportedly hired Michael Winger today to be their head of basketball. I mean, their owner has come out and said outright, like, we will never tank. So, take that for what it is. And there's some other potential names in Washington, including an old familiar one that may be of interest to some Knicks fans. But it's the same situations around the league that we kind of have been watching for a few years. And then there's usually something that pops up that's a little bit unexpected. I think how this series ends for Boston is going to be interesting. It's a lot of money that they could give to Jaylen Brown. whether they want to do that or whether they want to explore their options. And if they do want to explore their options, what are those options? I think it's certainly interesting. Toronto is another team that I find interesting. And what might they do? I saw Kevin Danishevsky had a tag me in a little thread about how he thinks that they're ripe for a tank job, and maybe Pascal Siakam becomes available. I mean, eyes have obviously been on OG Anunoby for a while. But yeah, and there's a couple other teams out there. I mean, it feels like there's a lot of smoke around the Bulls. Maybe we'll get into them. I don't think anybody really knows what the Bulls are doing. They're another team that after the season ended kind of came out and said, we're going to run it back and we're not tanking. So a lot of interesting situations. And then as far as the Knicks go, obviously they don't have a draft pick. Jeremy and I just talked all about that on the most recent episode. And whether they're going to try to trade into, let's say, late first round, maybe early second round. I think me and him both agree that there's a decent probability that they will try to do that. They have some different ways that they could do it. So something to keep an eye on. The Knicks, I'll say at the top, for anybody who may not know their situation in terms of the salary cap, the Knicks are, I say this with some trepidation, because last year a lot of people looked at them and were like, well, there's no way they're getting under the cap. And guess what? They got under the cap. This is a bit of a further bridge. And it just, there is, at least not that I could see, no feasible, reasonable world in which the Knicks got far enough under the cap to really be a major player in free agency. To say nothing of the fact that there is really nobody out there on the free agent market that is worth getting way under the cap for and doing all the things that you need to do that the Knicks specifically would need to do to get under the cap. That said, they do still have options in terms of things that they could do. Obviously, they have a lot of tradable pieces that after the season they had in terms of young assets, I don't think anybody wants to trade, but they still have those guys. They have all their picks, goes without saying. They have those protected picks that we've been now talking about for over a year. And then most prominently, they have this full mid-level exception of $12 million. And that is a real thing. And I would imagine that we're going to talk a little bit about potentially maybe some options for that. I was going through it right before I came on, and in terms of kind of spitballing some players. And it's $12 million. Sounds like a lot of money. And it is, and I think it is, especially since you are going to have teams, that are already starting to get a little, going to already start to prepare for the new CBA and this lead apron and all the restrictions that come with that. And they're not going to want to put themselves in a situation where they could be up against that even a couple of years down the line. But the Knicks are actually one of those teams where they have to start to think about going into the tax, and then how deep do they want to go into the tax? There's a possibility that if they don't, I mean, they could even go into the luxury tax this year. They won't, but that is not off the table. It is certainly possible. But I think I would expect the Knicks to spend that full $12 million. I think they could get a good player with that amount of money, but they're going to have to be, wise shoppers, so to speak, because the notion that you could get like what they need, which we'll talk a lot about what the Knicks need. And I think there's a lot of different ways to answer that question. I don't think there's like one path for the Knicks, which is, part of what makes this summer so interesting is because they have a lot of different avenues in front of them. And it's not like, one avenue's right, one avenue's wrong. How they go about these different paths are going to determine what the results are. But I there's no one player type that is like, if the Knicks just got this in terms of the $12 million exception, like they're home free, like they're gonna, they'll advance another round next year, or whatever your definition is of increased success. And that's especially because what does everybody need? Everybody needs a two-way wing, a wing that could shoot, a wing that could keep you honest on defense, and that you could just stick out there and he could be like the fourth best player on the floor for 30 minutes a night. Well, guess what? Those guys now cost upwards of $20 million a year. So you're not getting it with $12 million mid-level exception. That said, there are still bargains to be found. The team that I think most would favor right now to win the NBA championship has Bruce Brown on. I think he has a player option for next year. I think he's getting paid like $6 million. Now, Bruce Brown isn't a perfect player. His shot comes and goes, but like that dude, incredibly versatile, defends up and down, positions. And as we saw during the Lakers series, he could certainly nail a three when you need him to. There are bargains to be had, and then there are also, Dante DiVincenzo, a guy who has a player option for this year. He settled on a $4.5 million figure with the Warriors last year. He's going to get a big raise. That's a guy that Golden State, good job by them, getting a nice bargain in free agency last summer. Like those guys are out there, and then there's opportunities to overpay for guys who are more name guys. And there are certainly some name guys out there who the Knicks have been connected with in the past that are going to be on the market this summer. And, I don't know how much sense they will or won't make. All right, but that's it. We'll get into all that. My understanding from Andrew here in the old chat box is that we have some questions already. Looking forward to answering as many as I can tonight. I don't think I have anywhere to be. So whatever you guys want to talk about, I'm game. So Andrew Claudio, without further ado, here we go. So my understanding is this is a 2-part question from Sri. I know many fans are conflicted on this, but Kristaps Porzingis just had arguably his best season this past year and played in 65 games. I need a drink already. Talk about Kristaps Porzingis. He's no slouch defensively. He can create off the dribble and space the floor, which would open up driving lanes. How likely is a reunion? So I don't think I ever wrote this. In fact, I know I didn't write this. I think I was going to, and I'm like, this is gonna cause much undue attention. But when that article came out midway through the season, where Porzingis really, he kind of openly apologized not only to the fans of New York, but to the organization, in his own way. Someone reached out to me who I take what they say seriously and was like, that article did not go unnoticed. Within the walls of MSG. Now, take that with many grains of salt. One, because as I always say, I'm not a member of the media, and I'm not Ian Begley, and I don't have the sources that he does or Fred Katz does or any of these people that you should absolutely listen to anytime they say anything. But I took note. I'll just say that. I took note when this person said this to me. Also take it with a grain of salt because there are a lot of people within MSG who have, quote unquote, like decision-making, not power, but like, their voice can be heard. But that doesn't mean everything because there are so many voices within MSG whose voices carry weight. And just because one person or two people or whatever thinks that something might be a good idea, there might be 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 other people who think it's a terrible idea. All that being said, I think we know a couple of things. One, I shouldn't say we know. Here's what I am assuming. One, I am assuming, and credit to Fred Katz because he actually wrote this in his article from a couple days ago. I am assuming that every decision the Knicks make this summer will be made with one thought at the forefront, which is that how does this help Jalen Brunson? How does this make life easier for Jalen Brunson? How does it make it more likely that Jalen Brunson can take us where we want to go? And I don't say that to imply that I think Jalen Brunson could be their eventual like number 1A, or I think he's more like a 1B. And I think there's going to be someone else that is going to need to carry the majority of the load. And that is the other part of the summer. And it may not be this summer, maybe next year during the season, and maybe next summer. I do think that they feel like they need another legitimate star player, a guy who you give the ball to, could, do the sorts of things that Brunson did in the playoffs. And I think they feel like if they get that second guy and pair him with Brunson, as long as they have a pretty good roster around him, around those two, they, you could do the math. I don't know that anybody at this point believes that Kristaps Porzingis is that guy. I don't think he's that guy. I think he is like, I don't want to call him a role player because he's higher. I think there's a level in between your true stars and then you're like you're very good role players in the league. And I think like that's where like Julius Randle falls. Like Julius Randle's a 2-time All-Star. Is Julius Randle the type of star player where it's like, okay, he's going to be one of our 2 best players and he's going to take us all the way in June? No, I don't think he is. And I think we've seen the reasons why that is the case. And there are other all-star level players. I'm not just picking on Julius Randle. Kristaps Porzingis made an all-star team. But I don't think Kristaps is that level of player. But can Kristaps be your third guy? Can he be a vital cog in your system? Absolutely. I think Kristaps Porzingis could be that. And I think he would welcome a reunion. I think the Knicks, again, some people within the organization might welcome a reunion as well. The problem here, there's a few problems. For one, I do not believe for a second that you could have the sort of defense that succeeds in the playoffs with Kristaps Porzingis and Mitchell Robinson on the court at the same time. Kristaps Porzingis at this point is a 5. And you know what? Can you play him at times next to another big? Sure. That cannot be your de facto starting lineup because there's just not the mobility. It's asking too much. It's a lot of length. It's asking too much. I don't buy it. So that's number one. So if Kristaps Porzingis is your center, okay, then what are you doing with Mitchell Robinson? Well, I suppose Washington could want Mitchell Robinson in a sign and trade. I don't know. But I think if the Knicks want Kristaps Porzingis, well, why wouldn't Washington want Kristaps Porzingis back? And they seem to have every indication of wanting him back. So, like, if you're agreeing to a sign and trade, and that's the only way that Kristaps would come here because he's an impending free agent, what are you giving Washington for the right to do that? Would he open up the floor? Absolutely. I think he would be a really good fit next to Brunson. I think he would open up the floor for Randle. I think a stretch 5 in general would open up a lot of things for the Knicks. And it would be something that cures a lot of the ills for when we saw their offensive breakdowns in the playoffs. I think Kristaps could be a good enough defensive player. He's not Mitch, and that hurts, but I think he's a good enough defensive player. I also think you're going to have to account for the fact that he is going to miss a lot of games, but so does Mitch then again. And, I don't know that he's necessarily a high-minute guy, but that's why I have Isaiah Hartenstein, right? So, like, I think the questions come down to, does Kristaps want to be here? Do the Knicks want him here? Is it worth, does Washington want Mitch? Does somebody else want Mitch? Is there a 3-team deal that you could do? And can you work out a deal? I don't think it's crazy at all. I don't think it's crazy at all. Just purely from a basketball standpoint, I think Kristaps Porzingis can help you win basketball games. It's that simple. He still has all the unicorn qualities. Even if he may not be the guy that existed before that, fateful night against the Milwaukee Bucks. But yeah, I don't think it's crazy at all. Parvej Kumar, I hope I pronounced that correctly. If I didn't, I apologize. What should be the right move to not take a step back? Realistic trade targets. So, like, Benji said this when we spoke for the pod that came out today, and I'll just reiterate it. I think the mentality of the organization this summer should, first and foremost, should be, let's not make the wrong move. And I think if they go into it with a mentality of, what is the move where we don't take a step back? I think that's the wrong mentality, because the implicit in that, asking that question, is if we do nothing, that's not good enough. And the fact of the matter is, this is one of the youngest rosters in the NBA, youngest rotations in the NBA. Let me be more specific. Literally, every single player on this roster should be better in this rotation. Excuse me, I keep saying roster. Rotation. Every single player in this rotation should be better next year. To say nothing of the fact that you can have Josh Hart for an entire season. So I think doing nothing is better than doing a lot of the shit that is going to be rumored over the course of the summer. As far as realistic trade targets, that's such a hard question to answer, because, like, are we talking realistic star trade targets? Are we talking realistic trade targets to kind of bolster, the fringes of your roster? I'll give you an example of what I mean. Paul George. Fred Katz, in the article I just mentioned a minute ago, mentioned Paul George. Paul George has been mentioned at other times. I think Paul George, for what he is, which is a 32, 33-year-old guy who has some injury issues and has had, ups and downs in the playoffs. I think purely from a basketball standpoint, aside from, like, very clearly not realistic trade targets, like, Giannis or something, Nikola Jokic, right? Aside from, like, those guys, I think Paul George is probably about the best basketball fit in terms of, like, star level players that you're going to find for this roster. Now, is that a realistic trade target? I have no freaking clue. I don't think so. I think the Clippers are just going to run it back again, because why wouldn't they run it back? What are the Knicks, or for that matter, any other team, what do they have to give them where it's like, well, if you're in for a penny, you're in for a pound. If you're going to trade Paul George, like, you're not going to find a better version of Paul George, because Paul George is the best version of Paul George, and they're not going to upgrade to something else because they don't have the assets to do that. And if you trade him, are you going to trade Kawhi? And then what are you getting for Kawhi? And it opens up so, like, is he a realistic trade target? I have no idea. I don't think so. But again, and then you get more and more realistic as you go through the different names, all the way down to, like, I'm trying to think who's, like, the most realistic star trade target. Like, Zach LaVine's name has been bandied about. Well, there's a reason Zach LaVine's name has been bandied about, and that's because he's owed, whatever the frig is owed, $160 million over the next 4 seasons. There's a knee issue, and there's a lot of questions about whether, how much you could win with that guy for as talented as he is. And that's on the star end. And then you have, like, the sub-star level. Like, we just talked about Kristaps Porzingis. That would need to be a sign and trade. Like, here's a guy. No one's going to want to hear this, but I'll say his name anyway. You know who's a player that would fit right in terms of what the Knicks could have used in these playoffs? Step in, play 15, 20, 25 minutes a game as a backup swingman who you knew would be able to hit their rotations on defense, nail an open three-pointer, has been in the big moment before, doesn't shy away from the big moment, could put the ball on the floor, attack a hard closeout, is not going to make stupid errors. Alec Burks. There, I said it. Alec Burks has a $10 million team option. I would guess that the Pistons, because they're going nowhere and they have no reason to try to save $10 million on a guy who is worth, I would argue, at least that much in the open market, and he's an expiring contract, I would imagine they're going to pick up that team option, and they're going to exercise it in a way where they bring Burks back. I think Alec Burks would be a great freaking trade target for the Knicks. But if you go and trade for Alec Burks, and again, I love Alec Burks, like, that means someone, if you keep everything as is, that means someone in your rotation is no longer going to get time, or as much time as they did. Whether it's a Deuce McBride, or you could go up the ladder. Is like Emmanuel quickly going to get less time? Is Quentin Grimes going to get less time? We already had those issues after they traded for Josh Hart. Josh Hart's going to continue getting a lot of minutes, So, like, any way you slice it, there are downsides. Even if it's just young players on the roster maybe not getting as many minutes as I'm sure most fans would want them to get. Is it worth it? Like, I've asked this question so many times. I asked it before the trade deadline, and I think they made the right decision. But, like, it was a fair question to ask at the time. Like, how much should the organization have invested in, like, Deuce McBride's continued development? Like, is it absolute rock solid, ironclad? Deuce McBride needs 12 minutes a game next year or 15 minutes a game next year. Like, is that a necessary thing? And we could ask this question about other players as well. So it's a dicey question, and there's so many different variables, I guess, would be my answer. Matt Smith, what's going on, Matt? Good to hear from you. Is there any concern that the wide open East will prompt the front office to make a move the fan base is vehemently against, i.e. LaVine or Cat? I don't see Morey caving yet, so I'm more worried than excited. I think it's fair to be worried. And I think it's fair to be worried because, like, let's just do a very, very quick exercise. How many when considering the cost, and that's a key phrase, when considering the cost, because if Zach LaVine cost you, again, I'm making this up. If Zach LaVine cost you, let's say they pick up Derrick Rose's team option, right? That's $15 million. Evan Fournier's due almost 19, so that gets you up to 34. Yeah, that gets you up to 34. I think that actually with the 125% salary matching rule, like that actually might be enough. Let's say you have to throw an Obi Toppin too. Okay, fine. If you get Zach LaVine for Evan Fournier, Derrick Rose, Obi Toppin, and 2 protected picks, and then let's say the night after the draft they'll be able to trade this the night after the draft. A top 5 protected 2030 first round pick. Actually, I really don't want to give up a distant first round pick. Let's just make it a crazy example of 3 protected picks, 3 protected firsts. The Bulls decide we're blowing it up. We don't want to be in the Zach LaVine business anymore. Nobody else around the NBA wants to be in the Zach LaVine business, which again, it makes this unrealistic because I guarantee you somebody out there would beat the offer that I just said. But that's not the point. The point is, if you could get even a guy like Zach LaVine for that little, you're going to do it, and you'll figure out the rest later. But going through what it would realistically cost, and Zach LaVine and Karl-Anthony Towns and any other imperfect player you want to talk about are going to cost more than that. How many perfect trade targets are there out there where you'd be like, you know what, whatever the realistic cost is, let's say it's 25% past the realistic cost. Who is the player? How many players out there would Knicks fans be like, absolutely, sign me up? So, in no particular order, I'm just literally going down the standings. Giannis, not getting traded. Jason Tatum, not getting traded. I don't even know if I should put Joel Embiid on this list because I think a lot of fans, I think there are a ton of fans out there that have a big problem giving up what it would take realistically to get Joel Embiid. But you want to throw Joel Embiid on there, that's fine. Mikal Bridges, not getting traded, and sure as shit is not getting traded to the Knicks. I will throw Jimmy Butler's name onto this list. Don't think he's going anywhere after this playoff run, unfortunately. There's one name I'm gonna skip over, and I'll come back to. Jokic. Don't think Nikola Jokic is going anywhere. Devin Booker. Sorry. Keep on moving. Steph Curry. No, try again. Anthony Edwards. Don't think the Wolves are trading Anthony Edwards anytime soon. SGA. And even him, like, is he playing alongside Brunson? Whatever. They would figure that out, but we don't have to worry about it because the Thunder are trading SGA. Luka. Don't think that one's happening quite yet. And that's really it. That's really it. Every other player you look at, there would be some hemming and hawing about, oh, should we give up what it takes to get this guy? What about the fit? What about the age? What about the injury concerns? So if you consider the fact that there is probably not a single realistic trade target out there that, like, I forget all of us, like 80% of us would be like, okay, let's do it. That makes a lot of sense. We're let's get on board. I think it makes it. I think it is fair to be worried. The one name that I skipped over, who I find interesting, and I know, again, Kevin Danishevsky's been on this one for a while, is Pascal Siakam. Because Siakam's like, nobody knows what Toronto's going to do. I don't even know what Siakam's value is around the league. I don't think we know yet at this point, even deep into his career. And I think he's 30 years old, or maybe more, maybe older. Like, what is Siakam? Is Siakam like, is he the second best player on a title team? Can he be like a co-1? Like, if he's your 1A, can Brunson be your 1B or vice versa or something? Like, I don't know. He's a dynamite player, but even him, if the Raptors ever wanted to trade him, it would take a mammoth package, I do think. And like, I think people would have an issue with that, because it's like, okay, you traded for Pascal Siakam. Are you a contending team? I think a lot of people would say no, almost regardless of what they did or didn't give up. So yeah, it's okay to be worried. But I also think you have to trust this front office. I think they've given us a reason to trust them through 2 years, 2+ years, 2.5 years, almost 3. Jason M, who's your ideal target with the mid-level exception? Okay, I knew this question was coming, so I did my research. So again, it's tough, because if someone's your ideal target for the mid-level exception, that probably means that they're going to get more than the mid-level exception. So I just wrote down a shit ton of names. I don't know that there is a perfect target. I think the guy who most people would have at the top of their list right now would be Donte DiVincenzo. So Donte DiVincenzo obviously went to Villanova, former teammate of definitely Brunson. Was he? I'm assuming he was a teammate of Hart's too. I should know that, but definitely a teammate of Brunson's. Has a $4.5 million player option. I would imagine he's going to decline that. That's a guy who, like, he's a 3-and-D wing, and he gives you a little bit more than that. Does he want to leave Golden State? Is it going to be his choice? Everybody has speculated that Golden State is going to have to shed money, and I mean, there are people talking about, are they going to be able to shed Jordan Poole? Are they going to try to shed Andrew Wiggins? So the notion that they're going to pay to keep Donte DiVincenzo, I don't know about that. I think Donte DiVincenzo is worth the full mid-level. I think he makes your team better. I think the chemistry thing with him and the other Villanova guys, I mean, it's obvious. So yeah, I think he would be great. He'd definitely be number one on my list by far. A guy who made himself a lot of money so I want to just pivot to the Miami guys. Gabe Vincent made himself a lot of money during this playoff run. I don't see, because Gabe Vincent, you're not going to play him with Jalen Brunson. So if you're gonna, and I think actually Gabe Vincent may have played himself out of $12 million, but you never know. Maybe I'm overestimating it, because we just saw this guy and he was pretty awesome against the Knicks. I don't think that makes sense. Of the two guys, the other guy being Max Strus, I think Strus probably makes a little bit more sense. Strus is streaky, but he's also something that the Knicks don't have, which is a guy who could legitimately shoot off movement. He's not Klay Thompson, but he could shoot off movement. You have to honor that shot. And he's also just a big body. And I mean, is he a strong defender? No, but he's not a weak spot. I don't think he's a weak defender. I think he could function very well in a good defensive scheme. I think he would function fine in the Knicks defensive scheme. He's very comfortable in the role where all he's doing is firing away. And when you have someone that could fire off movement like that, And you can put the ball on the floor a little bit. But when you have somebody who can fire off movement like that, like you don't have to worry as much about the Bullock stuff that we worried about a couple years ago, because he doesn't, like, you can't really run that guy off the line because he doesn't need a lot of room and he's big. And the other team, especially in this offense, they're going to put their weakest defender on Max Strus, like we tried to do, and it didn't always work out so great. So I don't know if Max Strus is worth, $12 million, but he's a guy that I would at least look at. Bruce Brown as a player option, I don't know that Bruce Brown makes sense for this team unless there's a rejiggering of the roster, because part of why Bruce Brown functions so well in Denver is because Denver has shooting literally everywhere on the floor. And the fact that Bruce Brown is an inconsistent three-point shooter, he could still operate. And, oh, by the way, what does Bruce Brown do better than or as well as anyone in the league? He cuts. What does Denver have? Maybe the best, like, in the history of basketball, the guy who hits cutters better than literally anyone, because he's maybe a top 5 or 10 passer of all time, and he's 7 feet tall. So I don't know if Bruce Brown makes a lot of sense, but he's a guy that, again, if the roster looked a little bit differently, I would like. I don't think he makes sense for this roster. Let me throw a couple. Torrey Craig's a good player. He could defend a little bit. Like, he shot well from 3 this year. And yet, like, he seemed like such an uninspiring choice, to the point where he didn't seem like the answer in Phoenix, when on paper he should have been the obvious answer as the 5th guy in Phoenix. So, like, why wasn't he the obvious? Like, if a guy is not the obvious 5th guy alongside Kevin freaking Durant and Devin Booker, why is he going to help the Knicks? So I don't know about that one. I'll give you a couple more. I'm curious what Rui Hachimura's market is, because if the Lakers do go for Kyrie, they're going to have to get rid of the Hachimura cap hold, and so Hachimura is just going to be a restricted or an unrestricted free agent. Obviously, this would be contingent on the Knicks moving on from Obi Toppin. I don't know that I love the fit with Hachimura on the Knicks. Like, he's not a great defender, but I don't think he's a bad defender. I think he could play a little bit of defense. He seemed like he played a little defense for the Lakers this year. And man, the dude, he's not a great 3-point shooter, but as we've seen in so many different ways, you don't need to be a great 3-point shooter to really juice an offense. And that dude could juice an offense. And I think he's going to get better and better and better. I think Washington over the last couple of years, you could look at as a situation where, like, don't take what a guy did in Washington as evidence of, like, what they're going to be as an NBA player. That maybe that dude's even better than he's let on in this Lakers run. So that's another guy. And then the last guy I want to throw out there, and this would be, I don't even know what would need to happen for us to be in the market for this guy. Because, like, if we trade Mitch, I'm assuming Hartenstein's still going to be here. Hartenstein's not going to start. So, like, I can't imagine a world where we're in the market for a backup center. But this is all just to say, I really like Naz Reid. I think Naz Reid's a really good player. And he, like, kind of sort of fell out of favor at times in Minnesota. That's a dude he's a center who could defend and hit 3-pointers. So, like, someone's going to pay that guy. He's an unrestricted free agent. He can go anywhere he wants. Again, it makes no sense for the Knicks to as their roster is currently constructed right now. But I like Naz Reid. And then there are guys who you're going to hear the Knicks be connected to who I just want nothing to do with. Like, guys like Malik Beasley. Pass. Please pass. Kelly Oubre always seems to get linked to the Knicks. No, I'm good. Thanks. Yeah, those would be guys that I'm interested in. Drew P. Which star is more likely? Ideal, Giannis or Joel? Well, Joel is definitely more likely. If the Bucks trade Giannis Antetokounmpo, they should just fold their franchise. In terms of more ideal, Giannis every day of the week and twice on Sunday. I think Giannis, there's still an argument that, I mean, Jokic now has made it interesting, though. in terms of who's the best player in the league, in terms of guy you want for 82 games and then the guy you want for 16 games. But Giannis is still whatever. He's in the top 2 or 3 of that discussion, and he's going to be there for years. And you want to talk about a guy that I have full faith that would work just fine with Jalen Brunson? Giannis. Okay. Thanks, Drew. Andrew's telling me to shorten my answers just a tad, that we're already running behind. I never know. I don't know. We have like 5 questions or 20. Now I have an idea. Okay. Corey, which conference y'all rooting for in the finals? I don't know that I care. I'll root against Boston if they get there. If they pull this off, I'll root against Boston. I'll root for Denver. If it's Denver, Miami, I know obviously I should be rooting for Denver. I don't know. I mean, I could sit here and I'd be like, oh, absolutely, I'd be rooting for Denver, but I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I don't know that I care. Thanks, Corey. Joseph J. What's going on, Joseph? The Gobert, Mitchell, Murray, Kyrie, and KD trades all fell short badly this season. Does the market for a superstar reset this offseason? Absolutely not. Hope so. Thanks, KFS. So throw the Gobert trade out. That was mystifying throughout the entire league the second it happened. Throw that out the window. The Mitchell trade, I don't know. I think the Mitchell trade worked out. I mean, I think how about this? Here's a hot take. I think the Cavs would do the Mitchell trade again, even with Lauri Markkanen and turn it into what he turned into. Might seem like a crazy hot take. I think they do it again. Donovan Mitchell wasn't he 5th in MVP voting, or 6th, 5th, 6th, whatever. The DeJounte Murray trade, that was another one where it was like Atlanta a little desperate there. That trade felt a little desperate. It felt like, oh, we got to do something. We got to switch things up. Like, hey, let's put another point guard next to Trae Young. Can it work? Maybe it'll work. I don't know. They gave up a lot to try to find out. And there were other issues in that organization that, like DeJounte Murray's a good player. But again, that's like a trade that, like, when it happened, it was like, whoa, that's a hefty price. Kyrie, I mean, you can't. How do you even have a conversation about Kyrie Irving? Desperate organization. What do all these things? What do all these things have in common? Gobert trade, Murray trade, Kyrie trade. Desperate organization. The Durant trade is like that's new owner syndrome, and that's a new owner being like, "What? You're sitting here quibbling over Mikal Bridges? Fuck, f that. Get me Kevin Durant." I don't think any of this stuff really resets anything. Because go back a year, 2 years, 3 years, there's literally just one trade in recent NBA memory that what seemed like it was so far below the sticker price, and that was the Kawhi Leonard trade to Toronto, and that was such an anomaly because the dude had played 9 games and he was a year away from free agency, and like San Antonio, for reasons that still remain a little unclear, like valued DeMar DeRozan in that trade. And like DeMar DeRozan's a nice player. He's made, an All-NBA team since then. But like why is that what you value? Like that was just a weird thing. And like, who knows? Maybe there's some weird anomalous thing out there anyway. But like, the star trade market is what it is. It ain't going nowhere. Unfortunately. Frank Miranda, what's going on, Frank? What's up, Mac? It's your boy Frank from Patreon. Instead of trading for an MVP caliber player, the Knicks should parse their assets and trade for 2 wing all-star players. RJ to the Bulls for Levine, Randall for PG-13. Okay, so let's take these one at a time. The PG-13 conversation is part of the reason it's tough is because PG-13, Paul George and Julius Randle, my understanding is those guys are very good friends. And I would bet you, I'll bet you a donut that if they trade for Paul George, it ain't Randall going out in the trade. It would be probably RJ and young pieces and draft picks and whatever else. And they would try to have a 3-headed monster of Paul George, Julius Randle, and Jalen Brunson. And spoiler alert, I think that might work pretty well. I don't think they're trading Paul George. If they could get Paul George for Julius Randle and like a few picks, I mean, sign on the dotted line. I just don't think it's realistic. RJ to the Bulls for LaVine. Oh, man. You want to talk about something that would tear this fan base apart? And I don't mean like the fan base would be universally against that trade. I actually think there are a lot of fans like you who would be for the trade. I think that section of fans would be much less vocal than the segment of the fan base that would be against the trade. Like, if you're comparing RJ Barrett to Zach LaVine as basketball players over the larger sample size of, like, you know, RJ's been just even like the last 2 years or this year, whatever sample size you want to take that extends more than just the playoffs. Like, LaVine's a much better player. You know, there's no question about that. LaVine's a much better player. When he's on, he's one of the 10 to 15, but 10. When he's on, he's one of the 15 best players and offensive players in basketball. That has real value. But he goes through slumps. When he's going through a slump, he is the sort of player that, unlike truly great players who can find ways to help your team even when their shot is not falling, Zach LaVine, I think, is a little bit closer to the Julius Randle end of the scale, where it's like, if that dude's not hitting shots, he is actually actively hurting you because you're getting missed shots along with poor decision making. And my God, is there some poor decision making in terms of both shot selection and other things that come with Zach LaVine, to say nothing of the defense, which is not as bad as advertised, but it's also, again, not good. And like space cadet moments at like really inopportune times with LaVine. So my question with LaVine is more like, if that dude is one of your three best players, and he's going to be one of your three best players because he makes $40 million and he shoots, he wants to have the ball in his hands. He's going to have the ball a ton. That's the problem. It's like when you have a guy in your team, it's like it is really the Julius Randle question. When you have a guy that's going to have the ball in his hands that much, are you ever going to win the ultimate prize? When you're relying on that dude so much in terms of the decision-making, and when he has to be on the floor so much that you got to deal with the defense, and you already have Jalen Brunson on your team, who is not a strong defender. So now you're going to add another weak defender and a guy that, like, very much takes the ball out of Jalen Brunson's hands. I don't see it. He's not the guy that I want to make a move for. Andrew Abraham, what's going on, Andrew? John, do you want Booker if he's available in the trade market? I'm trying to think of how many players I would want before Devin Booker. I don't know that there are 5 players in the league that I would want to trade for before Devin Booker, but Devin Booker is not available on the trade market. And if he ever was, I don't think we would be able to get him. Emil Boumansor, what's going on, Emil? I just want to say, watching other teams, i.e. Denver and the Lakers, tells me we have a long way to go. We need to be realistic with trading and firing people, keep growing and finding pieces that fit. Well, no surprise here. Emil always has good, thoughtful comments, and this is extraordinarily thoughtful. I'm not going to go on a rant right now, but obviously there have been a lot of opinions out there that certain people can't get over certain coaches because they're like, if it wasn't for these few decisions, we would be up, now 3-1, I guess, in the Eastern Conference Finals, and we'd be marching on our way to the NBA Finals. I'm not so sure about that. As Boston reminded everybody last night, still a very good team, and Miami's really good, and Denver is really, really, really good. And, like, I guarantee you, whoever is raising that trophy in 3 weeks, no one's going to be looking at them being like, man, what a weak champion. What a weak champion that the NBA crowned this year. No one's going to be saying that. And I completely agree with you, Emil. I think we do have maybe not a long way to go, but like long enough of a way to go, where the notion of like, you know, where we have to like with fire the coach. I don't agree with that, obviously, but and also that like you need to make trades this offseason because we're like this small move away or that small move away. I don't know about that. I don't know if this team's year is next year, or even the year after that. I agree with continuing to grow. I agree with continuing to find pieces that fit, and I'll double down on what I've been saying a few times. The most important thing they could do this offseason is not make the wrong move. And that includes like firing the wrong person. Juanon, what's going on, Juanon? 3 questions. Okay, here we go. Number 1, Randall or RJ, which one is gone? If I had to bet on it right now, I would say RJ is gone. Of the 2, I would keep RJ and I would try to trade Randall, even if I'm not getting as much back for Randall, which I'm not so sure is the case, by the way. And by the way, I think they would be a worse regular season team in that case. 2, do you see Houston looking at a guy like Randall to supplement the incoming Harden acquisition? I've had Houston circled in my book for ever since the Knicks season ended, and I've been trying to think of like potential moves this summer, potential teams that could look at Julius Randle and be like, we want him. We think he is part of our solution. I keep coming back to Houston. It might be crazy. It might be insane. Part of it is because Randall is from Texas. I know he's from the Dallas area. He's not from Houston. But if there's a team that again, they have made no bones, no effort to hide their desire they want to win again this year. They have a pick out the door in this upcoming draft, and just being like, we just got to get talent in the door. What's the best talent we could get in the door that's not going to cost us an arm and a leg? I could see it being Julius Randle. That's just, and that's not something I have heard anything about. That's just me trying to read the room. Could be dead wrong. 3, would the Raptors hiring Steve Nash impact RJ Barrett's value to Toronto? No, I don't think so. I think they're a smart organization, and they're not to say that they wouldn't go for RJ. I think they may very well go for RJ, but I don't think their hiring of a coach would impact that. Juanon with 2 more. Thank you, Juanon. Thank you. Very, very generous of you, Juanon. Appreciate it. Seriously. Last 2 questions. 1, can we get a 2024 prediction pod with Robert Cross detailing why he's predicting 53 wins again? Yeah, coming to an off-season podcast near you. And 2, will 53 wins be enough for the top spot in the East? Will the East champ next year win at least 53 games? I'm going to say yes. And I don't think it's going to be the Knicks. Robert Cross, hello. Speak of the devil. It's your boy, John. Can we move off Kevin Danishevsky in the offseason? I feel like Brooklyn could use all the fans they can get in their community. Thanks. I'll hang up and listen. # 53 wins. Why are you coming after Kevin Danishevsky? What can Kevin Danishevsky do to you? Because he's trying to acquire Pascal Siakam? Is something else? Maybe, I don't know. Siakam's a good player. I like Siakam. I don't know if I wouldn't hate it if they went and got Siakam. But no, I love having Kevin in his fan base, and we don't want to send him anywhere. You, on the other hand. I don't know about that. JG, question. How you feeling about Mr. Buddy Hield? No. Well, okay, let me take a step back. Buddy Hield's a great shooter. This team needs shooting. But I fully believe that if this team gave Evan Fournier the type of minutes and shots that Indiana gave to Buddy Hield, I think Evan Fournier could give you, I don't know, 80 to 85% of what Buddy Hield gives you. But they didn't give Evan Fournier that time because they have other young players who deserve that time more because they have higher ceilings as like two-way guys. Now, I think Buddy Hield's a better shooter than Evan Fournier for sure. He's a more dangerous shooter, the whole thing. if I'm a team that is where the Knicks are right now, I'm not trying to be in the Buddy Hield business. We know what Buddy Hield is, and I don't think he's a guy who, if you want to be a contending team, you're like, that's the dude that I want to give 30 minutes a night to, and let take, 10 to 12 shots a game. Don't see it. Appreciate the creativity, though. Akiva, what's going on, Akiva? Thoughts on Bagley saying the Knicks discussed veteran shooting guards that would fit as a number 2? I think it makes perfect sense. I think, and again, that report was pre-trade deadline. And I believe Ian Begley also said, yeah, he did. He said it to me when I was on with him on one of the putback episodes, where there was a team that called about Randall before the trade deadline, and they were shut down. And the Knicks were like, yeah, we're not trading Julius Randle. So I think if you take that report in that context and you're like, okay, well, we got Jalen Brunson set at the 1. We got Julius Randle set at the 4. We got Mitchell Robinson set as our 5. Whereas the up, RJ Barrett was not having a great year, but I think the natural spot to try to upgrade would have been the 2 spot. And that's not any shade on Quentin Grimes. I love Quentin Grimes. Quentin Grimes is going to be a really good player. But if there was a natural position where you try to upgrade, it's the 2. So I don't think it's nuts. And also, depending on who you get at the 2 or who they were thinking about getting at the 2 at that time, if it involved RJ Barrett going out in the trade, you could always probably slot Quentin Grimes at the 3. Now, Quentin Grimes is a little small to play the 3. But you also have Josh Hart here now, and I know that gets us into all kinds of spacing issues, but I think it makes perfect sense. And I would not be shocked if they, again, were looking in the market for a 2 who could have a little bit more offensive gravity. Not to say that they're giving up on Quentin Grimes. I don't think that is the case at all. But, could you move Quentin Grimes to the bench? Is that a possibility? I think it's very realistic, depending on what they do this offseason. Robert Cross with another one. First time, long time, John. What are the downsides of slow playing the hand in the offseason? Standing largely pat in the offseason and running it back this fall. Hashtag 53 wins. Well, the downsides, I think, I'm just off the top of my head. You kind of, the Knicks, I think their talent, and you could say this about almost every team in the league, but their talent is not such that they are guaranteed, if they stand pat, to go out there next season and win more than 47 games, which is what they won this year. I think their talent more or less guarantees that they will be at least a 500 team. But does it mean that they're necessarily going to go out there and they're going to win more than 47 games? No. I think they could go out there, stand pat, and then they could win 50 games. I think that's absolutely on the table. I also think they could go out there and win 42 or 43 games or anything in between, and then go out and get the wrong matchup in the first round and lose in the first round. Now, would that outcome be better than making the wrong move? Absolutely. If the wrong move sends out real assets and sends out young players that you don't get the best valuation on, and you're bringing in a player that is not part of the solution and all those sorts of things, it would be better to do what I just said. The problem there, and I'm sorry for those who are not going to want to hear this, but I'm going to say it anyway, because guess what? He said it. James Dolan is still your owner. And James Dolan went on his little press tour during the season and kind of came out and said, he wants to see growth this year and then more growth the year after that. And then more growth. He wants them, in his mind, it's a steady progression. Does basketball work that way? Does sports work that way? No. But James Dolan came out and basically said that's what he wants to see. And I also think he said something to the effect of like, are we getting better players or whatever? So like they bypassed the opportunity to get Donovan Mitchell last summer. It worked out fine because Jalen Brunson was their star. If they go another season and they don't upgrade the roster in a significant way, and RJ Barrett doesn't turn into the player that you and some other people think that he's going to become, which is essentially an all-star, not essentially an all-star, like an all-star, then you might have an unhappy owner. Now, does that matter? It may matter to the people whose paychecks he signs. And this is why I think skeptics of the Knicks during the Dolan era have said things to the effect of they will never win under Dolan. I don't agree with that, but I also think that there is a bit of pressure on the front office to, if there is a move that they like, to maybe execute. And whereas I think you and certain members of the fan base are like very, very content to like stay the course. And I think certain people, again, out there wouldn't want to trade anybody for the talent that is available this summer. I do not think for a second that is how the front office is going to operate, rightly or wrongly, but I mean, just, keeping it a buck. I don't think any organization, the Knicks or anybody owned by whoever they're owned by, should sit around waiting for the perfect trade, because most of the time the perfect trade is never going to come. You kind of have to, when you're a team like the Knicks and you did not luck into drafting Nikola Jokic or drafting Giannis Antetokounmpo or, having Jimmy Butler say, I want to go play for that team, and walking there and forcing his way there in a sign and trade. Like, they got Brunson, but I think they need another big time guy. And how are they going to get there? It's probably going to involve them taking a risk of some kind at some point, would be my guess. JG with another one. Cat, Karl Anthony Towns, posing next to Aaron Judge. What y'all think about that? At least he picked the right New York baseball team. Shots fired at Andrew. I mean, he is a Yankee fan. He, whatever. I don't care. I don't care. Again, Cat's one of those guys that, like, if they traded for him, I'd find a way to talk myself into it. The nice thing about having Jalen Brunson is, like, if it was ever a guy who I could talk myself into, like, okay, I don't believe in this player in the way that I think a team needs to believe in him to have him, be a prominent player on the roster. I don't believe in Karl Anthony Towns like that, but if there's anyone who could get the most out of that dude, I think it could be Jalen Brunson. Whereas a guy that's a fault of a guy like Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler took one look at Karl Anthony Towns and was like, fuck this. Get me the fuck out of here. I don't think Jalen Brunson would do that. I think Jalen Brunson would embrace it much in the way he has embraced Julius Randle as, a kind of imperfect sidekick, but Brunson got the best out of him. Would he not potentially do the same for an even more talented player in Karl Anthony Towns? I don't know. It's not the tree I really want them to bark up, but Juan651, what's going on? Hey, John, could you see the Knicks checking the temperature for Markkanen? No. Or would they not want to repeat last offseason? I think Markkanen would fit. I mean, what's the trade? He's you're playing him at the 4. I understand the Jazz played him at the 3. He's a 4. I can't even imagine Utah's asking price. No, I don't think they want to relive that. I think Markkanen's a wonderful player. Is he the guy that I think, like, what are you doing with Julius Randle? Because the Jazz want nothing to do with Julius Randle. So then you got to find someone that values Julius Randle, who's then going to send real stuff to Utah. And then you're also sending real stuff to Utah. in the form of picks and young players. And it's not, I don't think the market is right for that sort of a thing. But who knows? Ben Kim Garvey. What's going on, Ben? It's a damn good day, John. Thank you for jumping on. My pleasure. Thank you, Ben. Question: which Houston or OKC players should we be trying to acquire? They can't play or pay most of them. I'm just going to go to the name. So OKC, like, I think they have their core. You know, the five that they kind of trotted out there towards the end of the season that, if I'm not mistaken, did not really contain a center. Yeah, that's right, because they were playing the other Jalen Williams at center, and I don't know if he's really a center. Man, Isaiah Joe's a hell of a player, but I don't think they're going to let him go. Talk about a great shooter, but again, he's on a dirt cheap contract. They have no reason to let Isaiah Joe go. So I don't see anybody on Houston and OKC rather. Sorry, OKC. I don't see anyone on OKC being a natural target because like that's a smart organization, and they're not going to they're going to properly value their players. Houston is interesting to me. So Houston, I mean, Senjun, everybody loves Senjun, and he's really good, and they don't seem to value him. Now, you want to talk about a guy who's not a Tom Thibodeau center because he doesn't defend, which is kind of a problem. And again, I don't. It sounds like I'm throwing shade at Tom Thibodeau. I don't think he'd be any coach's center because every coach wants their center to play defense, which is why you're going to have to get a really. I mean, I don't know. Can it work? Can it work in the NBA nowadays if you have a center who does not protect the rim at all? I think it's a valid question. For as gifted as that guy is on offense, I don't know. He's not the guy that I'm worried about, though. Jalen Green, look, I don't know. I don't think it was like it was a reputable source when this got out there a few weeks ago. Something about like Houston could maybe potentially, if everything was right, like listen on Jalen Green. Man, when I saw that, I was like, huh. Jalen Green is a fucking stud on offense. Like, full stop. That dude is legit in every way. And someone, oh man, I apologize. I really want to give this person credit. I think someone asked me like an Ask Macri question for the newsletter. It was either in an email or a comment, or maybe it was even a Twitter DM. I don't remember, and I apologize. If this is you, let Andrew know that it's you. But someone basically said something to the effect of like, instead of going to try to trade for the star, do what we did with Brunson again, which is like find the guy who's not considered a true star yet, trade for him, and then have him blossom into a star player. Here. That doesn't quite apply with Jalen Green because Jalen Green, again, was his number 2 pick in the draft 2 years ago. So, like, Houston ain't, no matter how dumb they are, they're not giving him away. And I'm sure if they did put him on the market, there'll be a lot of teams. Oh, my God, would there be a lot of teams that would be lining up to try to get that dude. But, man, if he actually hit the market, again, I don't know what it would take to get him. But you want to talk about a potentially franchise-changing move to get a guy before he really hits, you know, and the irony there, it's not apples to apples, but like Houston turned around their organization when they traded for James Harden. Everybody knew James Harden was good. James Harden was the number 3 pick in the draft. They didn't know he was going to be an MVP. Now, I'm not sitting here predicting Jalen Green's going to be an MVP, but like, I don't know. I would be monitoring that situation. Robert Cross, it's your boy John. My prediction for next season is RJ wins most improved player. Who would you pair? Good for you, Robert. Who would you pair with Brunson and RJ as the third star? Do you see what I did there? Hashtag 53 wins. Yeah, I see what you did there. I'm not quite there with you. Joel Embiid. There you go. There's your answer. I know you love Joel Embiid. So, Frank Miranda. What's up, Mac? It's your boy Frank from Patreon. Fans wanting the Knicks to stand pat will be highly disappointed this offseason. I agree. The East is open with Brunson in his contract. This is a no-brainer for the front office. Yeah, I think but again, I do think that they're going to go for it within reason. Within reason, you could take that a number of different ways, but I completely agree. The notion that the Knicks are going to bring back this same roster next year, that's not happening. Yeah. Spoiler alert. Okay. MRNK. Is there a chance we could shake Jackson loose from Memphis with Randall as the centerpiece of the trade? Thanks. I don't think that is something that would happen this offseason. I don't see why Memphis would do that this offseason. I think Jackson is, correct me if I'm wrong, I think he still has 3 years left on his deal. Yeah, I don't see it, but eventually, and his father's a coach with Westchester, so like the ties are there. I just don't see it happening this offseason. Thanks, MRNK. William. Hey, John, if you were the Knicks GM now, what would your ideal plan be? Be patient and wait for another trade like Donovan Mitchell, or try something big before? Can one more star help Brunson get to the Eastern Conference Finals? I think the right star could help Brunson get to the Eastern Conference Finals. I think the right star could lead Brunson and this team to a championship. I think the only star that has a chance of shaking free this summer that could potentially elevate to that level is Joel Embiid. And I've already made my feelings very clear on Joel Embiid. I am very much a fan of Joel Embiid. I think Joel Embiid is going to win a championship someday. I don't know if that's happening this summer. So, but I would not. I would have a little bit more urgency. I would use the mid-level exception on a player that would get real rotation minutes. I would certainly bring back Josh Hart, but I would look around. And I mean the biggest thing I would do is, how can I get more shooting on this team? How can I get more meaningful, consistent, reliable 3-point shooting on this team? Which, can you ever really do that in the NBA today? Robert Cross with another one. Thank you, Robert. It's your boy, John. What is Randall's trade value as a 2-time All-NBA All-Star? I am really curious about this, and Jeremy's playing kickball somewhere. Hashtag 53 wins. I think Julius Randle's trade value is about what you'd expect, which is to say it is not the trade value of a guy with his resume. I think you're not pulling the wool over anybody's eyes, Robert. Like, this is a player who just had he has one of literally in terms of guys who have played at least 10 postseason games and like put up 15 or more shots in the playoffs over that time. He's one of the least, if not the least efficient postseason player ever, to say nothing of however, I was going to say personality. I don't even know what you want to put it under, like issues. Like, everybody sees this shit. People, he has value. People would give up stuff for him, but like, I just don't think there's to find a trade where you're sending out Julius Randle and you're making your team better. I think that trade is really hard to find. I'll say that. MRNK with another one. Is there a chance we could? Oh, we got this one already. Yeah, not yet. Eddie C. Thanks for the contribution. Obi, Fournier, 2 lottery protected picks for DeRozan. So I'm not sure if you're referring to the protected picks that we have for other teams, from other teams. Even if you are referring to that, I mean, I do it if I was so fine. Let's say the Pistons pick and the Dallas pick, whatever. Obi and Fournier. Like, yeah, you do that if you're the Knicks. Chicago's not doing that. Chicago now, and honestly, even if it was 2 lottery protected Knicks picks, that's a trade both teams say no to, because if it's 2 lottery protected Knicks picks, then it inhibits you to the ability to trade those picks in other trades, and then you're all kinds of then you screw up your ability to make a big trade. So that's going to be a no from someone all around. Thanks, Eddie. Dom Cappuccini. Hey, John, do you see OG more gettable in the offseason than back in February, if in fact the Raps want to do that? Also, do you see New York only trying to add him in addition to the current big 3? No, I could see New York entertaining a trade where they would send out one of their big 3. I don't, is he more gettable? I could see him being a little bit more gettable, but not by much. Because ultimately, the market is what the market is, and someone's going to pay for that dude. Because there's a team out there who's going to think that he's the 3rd best player on their. He's going to make them a title contender. Or he's going to solidify them as a title contender. And all it takes is one team to think that and have the assets to trade for him. I mean, Memphis. I know Memphis is going through a lot of shit, but Memphis would still pay the farm for OG Anunoby, and they have a lot of picks, and they have some young players. So I don't think the price would decrease that much, if at all. Honestly, is OG Anunoby the answer for this team? After what we just saw in the playoffs, I don't know, man. I don't know. Something about it doesn't add up to me. Busy, what's going on, Busy? What about Bruce Brown? I mentioned Bruce Brown already. Doesn't stop shooting, but another guy that does everything, but super valuable to the Nuggets. Yeah, it's a problem where it's like that dude's best skill on offense is like cutting and moving without the ball, and you need the sort of offense that's going to be able to exploit those skills. And I'm not sure, much to your chagrin, Busy, because you've talked about this all the time, about how the Knicks don't have the sort of offense that other teams have. Now, I think part of that is personnel. The Nuggets have Nikola Jokic. And who did Bruce Brown succeed with before he went to Denver and Nikola Jokic? The team with Kevin freaking Durant and Kyrie Irving. So again, he's done well in picking his spots and being on teams that have the sort of offensive gravity elsewhere on the floor where Bruce Brown could do his thing. I don't think the Knicks are that team, unfortunately, right now. Good question, though. Jessica, what's going on, Jessica? John, who would you like to see moved, traded, and who do you want to see them pursue? Same question for Andrew if he's around. I don't know if Andrew's going to answer this, but I will answer it. Who would I like to see moved? There's no one on the roster that I'm dying to see get traded. I like everybody. I've voiced the same concerns that we've been voicing for years about the viability of what's your ceiling if you keep Julius Randle around. But again, what's the trade? What's the trade that makes sense? And then who do I want to see them pursue? I've said already, I think Paul George would make a lot of sense if he was available, even though he's older, depending on the price. Obviously, it's always depending on the price. I'd be fine with them using the mid-level. Use the mid-level on somebody and run it back. I'd be fine with that. I don't think that's what they're going to do. But I would be... I don't want to go trade for one of these star players just because they're star names and like they carry weight, but I think I would be a little bit more aggressive this summer than probably most of the fan base. And just really from a valuation perspective. Is there, because now the Knicks finally have guys that have real value. And I think teams around the league could look at a couple of players in this roster and be like, okay, we'll pay a real price for that. Now, does the trade line up with any of those teams? I don't know. But keep an open mind. You got to be willing to give to get. That's all. Andrew says, I would run it back as much as you can. Maybe send Obi to a place you could play more and try to upgrade that spot if possible. Yeah, I mean, sure. Again, tough spot to upgrade because there's not a whole lot of obvious like backup power forward types out there. I will say this, because they're going to maybe need every penny they could get. You know, the Knicks kicked the tires on Jared Vanderbilt at the trade deadline. If the Lakers, he was almost out of the rotation by the time they finished the playoffs. Might Jared Vanderbilt be gettable from the Lakers as a backup 4? Maybe. It's possible. Alex, what's going on, Alex? Which free agents will GMAC add to the KFS faculty? Oh man, we're much like Leon Rose. We don't project, or Andrew, I should say, does not project those sorts of plans.
I'll say this: I have no idea if my audio is good or bad, so apologies if it's
fine.
Okay, so it's good now. Okay, good. Alex, we're always looking for ways to upgrade. Maybe exploring Robert's idea of sending Kevin to Brooklyn, but we got to see what the value and the return is. So
it's all about the valuation.
Stay tuned.
Good question, Alex. Lunas Amarat. Sorry if I missed this, but thoughts on the Clippers GM gone. Interesting. I mean, I am under the impression that Lawrence Frank still runs things there behind the scenes. You know, do I think that that's an indication that they're going to blow it up? I don't. So I don't really have anything to say because I feel like if there was more to that situation, I feel like we would have heard about it. But you never know. Crazier things have happened. Busy with another one. I think I'm going to like this question. Do you see Julius and RJ at the same level in the sense that if we are to trade either, it will have to be part of a package to get a number 1? Trade either. I think. Okay. I think the only way they trade Julius is if they get back a guy that they think makes them a contender or close to a contender. I could see RJ going out in a trade that maybe. You know what? Actually, no, I'm going to take that back. I don't think they're trading RJ for a guy that is anything other than like either a star or like very close to a star. In terms of like do I see them at the same level? I find their trade values to be fascinating. I've already talked about Julius's trade value. I think RJ's trade value is really interesting. I think there are more teams around the league that would be interested in RJ than Julius, but I also think that there are probably teams out there that would value Julius more than RJ. But it's about what do those teams have? What do they want to give you back? And the trickiest part of it for the Knicks is like they're not winning 47 games this year without Julius Randle on their roster. They're just not. They're not nearly as good of a team. That dude went out and won them so many freaking games. So if you trade him and you're not getting back an equivalent star player or better star player, you're making yourself worse. Now, might that be, depending on what that trade is, might that be for the best? But again, I don't see that trade the trade out there where it's like, okay, we're going to take a step back, but it's really in furtherance of taking 2 steps forward down the line. It's really tough to construct those trades. Because I don't know that Julius Randle's anyone's valuing Julius Randle like that. I could be wrong. All it takes is one team. Stock chasers. What's going on, stock chasers? How much would KCP or Siakam cost us, you'd think? Well, KCP would cost you a hell of a lot less than Siakam. KCP's a 5th starter. And the Nuggets are on the verge of winning a championship, so I don't know that they're looking to break up their core. Siakam, how much would Siakam cost? Let's just make the question easier and assume that Toronto wants to blow it up, because otherwise it just gets too complicated. Pascal Siakam, hold on, I got to look up his contract. I think he makes, I'm going to guess he makes $37 million. Pascal Siakam is an expiring contract, for one, which makes it also dicey. Oh, look, I was right. Makes $37.8 million. Okay. Good job by me. And he's also 29. He'll be 30 next year. What do you trade for an expiring Pascal Siakam? I mean, if you trade for him, you're obviously very confident that he's going to extend with you. I would assume he extends. You work out an extension with him this summer, so let's put that issue aside. Let's figure he extends. It's probably costing you a young player of Toronto's choosing, whether it's RJ or Quickly. And if it's Quickly, it becomes tough because then the salary makes it a little bit more difficult. So, like, do they want Quickly and RJ? And then the really complicated part is, what do you do with Julius Randle? Because Siakam's a 4. You're not playing him at the 5. You're not playing him at the 3. You're not playing Randle at the 3. You're not doing any of that garbage. I have to think if, like, Toronto is not. Are you sending like Randle and like 2 future firsts for Siakam? Like, do the Knicks have the appetite for that? I don't know about that. So really, it comes down to finding a home for Randle, because I don't think if Toronto's trading Siakam, I just don't think they want Julius Randle. That they're tanking. So then, what are you doing with Randle? You have to find a third team for Randle, and you have to find a team that's gonna like. So again, like, it would have to be something like a Houston, right? Where it's like Houston's ready to win now. Are they trading Jalen Green to get Julius Randle? No, but maybe the Knicks send Randle and like a first to Houston, and then Jalen Green goes to Toronto. This would only work because Houston is so far under the cap. But whatever. If Houston has to send some money out, then they could send some money out. Although they don't really have a lot of bad money to send out, so that makes it tougher. And then Siakam comes here, and then what else are we sending to Toronto? Are we sending 1 pick? Are we sending 2 picks? Are we sending 2 of our firsts and all of our protected for? Like, it's a big package. Siakam is really freaking good, but again, it comes back to, if you're the Knicks, so now you're sending out all these firsts, and you're sending out a guy who just made the freaking All-NBA team over Pascal Siakam, by the way. So it's like you're sending out all this stuff to get a guy that, like, this. Does Pascal Siakam necessarily make you better than Julius Randle made you in the regular season? No. Is he definitely going to make you better in the playoffs? I don't know. Probably. I mean, he's going to be better than Julius Randle was in the playoffs, but, like, is that worth it? Is that worth multiple first-round picks, old unprotected first-round picks, and a young player? Like, it's just really tough the more that I think about it and try to talk myself into this. Tough trade. Tough to find a trade that works where it makes sense for the Knicks. Yeah. Anyway, Sean with a W. What's going on, Sean? What will the Knicks rotation be to start next season? Oh man.
Real quick, he
Yeah.
texted me and said he wants you to answer what it should be, like what you would do, and what it will be, what you think it'll be.
Am I choosing from only players on the roster now?
This is your canvas, whatever you'd like it to be, John. Trade for whoever you'd like it to be,
All right.
realistically.
Here's what I think. I think either Grimes or RJ Barrett will not be in the starting lineup. I think Randall's still here. I think obviously Brunson's still here. I think Mitch is still here. And I think one of Quickly or RJ will be gone. I think Obi's gone. I think they'll have a different backup four, like you talked about. What do I think it should be? I mean, I honestly I can't even answer that because it's like I could sit here and I can give you 100 different rotations, all contingent on different trades. You know, I don't know what trades are going to be out there. You know, try to go get Dante DiVincenzo with the mid-level. How about that? I wouldn't mind that. Frank Miranda with another one. What's up, Mac? It's your boy Frank from Patreon. Best prediction. Who are the Knicks trading for, and what's the starting five next year? I think we saw IQ's last game. Okay, that'll be my bold prediction. My bold prediction is Emmanuel Quickly is or RJ Barrett, one of those two guys on a different team next year. I don't think both. I think one of those guys on a different team. And I think they will trade for. I think there will be a star-ish player on the roster next year. I think that player will be playing alongside Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle. And yeah, I think I answered the question. There you go. Busy with another one. My God, Busy, you're insane. Thank you. My last for the night. Denver and Miami showed that patience and stability are huge parts of success. Kept the coach and core together, allowed them to grow. Why can't that be us? Keep coach and players, make upgrades on the margins. 4 words. Nikola Jokic, Jimmy Butler. That's why it can't be us. And I know that that's going to seem like I'm disparaging Jalen Brunson. When we're talking about this level, when we're talking about championship, Nikola Jokic is showing himself to be potentially one of the 15 to 20 greatest players of all time. Jimmy Butler is one of the, I mean, I've been watching basketball for 30 years, and there aren't 10 guys that I'd rather have in the playoffs than Jimmy Butler. You know, he's a superstar. There aren't 5 guys I'd rather have more than Jimmy Butler in the playoffs like this year, for sure. So I think that's the difference, where we don't have that level of guy. I think we need another guy with Brunson. So that would be my pushback. That's a fair question. HB, what do you think? Julius and Evan Fournier for Cat. Then Mitch and Grimes for Levine. Oh, my God. So we're trading for Karl Anthony Towns and Zach LaVine. We're pairing them with Jalen Brunson. And the defense will come from where? The lineup would be Cat, Obi. Yes, here we go. Obi might be the best defensive player in that starting lineup. RJ, Levine, and Jalen Brunson. Yeah, no, that's going to be a no from me. As for just the notion of Julius to Minnesota for Towns, I don't know how wedded this front office is to Julius Randle or isn't. I do think that they are not about to send him just any place. And I would be shocked if they sent Julius Randle to Minnesota. Just throwing that out there. Could be wrong. Throw it back in my face. Hashtag old takes exposed. Big Surge. Hey, John, would you be interested in a Mitch for free agent to be Brook Lopez in a sign-and trade? He was Defensive Player of the Year runner-up, and his shooting post-game can help us. Why are the Bucks doing that? Why are the Bucks doing that? Put aside whether the Knicks would do that. I actually think I'm not sure the Knicks want to be paying what it's going to take to keep or get whatever you want to say. I don't know that they necessarily want to be in the Brook Lopez business at Brook Lopez's age and at what his number is going to be. And also, like, Brook Lopez seems to like Milwaukee. I think it's a no from both teams, but it's definitely a no from Milwaukee. His spacing is so important to what they do. Thanks, Big Surge. Jibo, does KP fit? Is RJ a keeper? How about Mitch? So we talked about KP earlier. Go check the beginning of the live stream for that. Is RJ a keeper? He's part of the problem, I think. But is he a keeper in the sense that, like, you can't trade RJ Barrett? No, because there aren't 7 players in the league that you could say that about. But can RJ be a part of the solution? Absolutely. Absolutely, I think he can be. Do I think he will wind up being part of the eventual, like, contending core of this team? I have my doubts. And then Mitch, that's a tougher one. Something I always pay attention to around this time of year, when you get to this level, finals, conference finals, you look at teams and you look at the pivots that they can make at the center position, whether it's not playing a center at all and still holding up on defense, whether it's having a center that is like the center of their offensive ecosystem, whether it is having a center who is like game-changing defensive center in like Bam Adebayo, and, oh, by the way, is one of the 5 best offensive centers in the sport, or 6 or whatever. Like, Mitch is great at the things that Mitch is great at. He is also incredibly limited. So I think at some point that there is a Mitchell Robinson conversation to be had, or at the very least, the team needs to have a pivot away from, like, Mitch. And I love Isaiah Hartenstein, but not Isaiah Hartenstein, but a guy who could, like, fundamentally come in, keep you honest on defense at the center position, but also give you something different, give you a different look on offense. I think that is something that they need to figure out at some point if they really want to go all the way. It's not priority number 1 this offseason, but it is a priority at some point. Dom Cappuccini with another one. So much talk about adding shooters and or big wings is coming up. With Hart expected back in a 9-man rotation, where is the room in the rotation without a decent-sized trade? Well, the obvious one is you either go to a 10-man rotation, or, and this is the thing that, I've been kind of dancing around, if they bring Hart back, and I think they will, and if they use their mid-level exception on a guy that could really come in and help them and play minutes, like a Dante DiVincenzo, well, then you're either going to 10 men, which I don't think they want to do, or there's a 2-for-1 trade. And a 2-for-1 trade that ups your ceiling at a key position. And I don't want to say, you guys, y'all could do the math at who those players might be. I said my hot take already. One of RJ or Quickly will not be here next year. There's a reason I said that. Bill Peter Friend, what's going on, Bill? I think Bogdanovich of the Pistons makes sense. It might take RJ as a centerpiece, but his shooting would be key. Perhaps a bigger package built around him and the number 5 pick. I know this was what was proposed by James Edwards III of The Athletic in his recent article. I think it's an interesting concept only because of the 5th pick, and God, the Knicks would have to absolutely love someone at the 5th pick, because for as good as Bogdanovich is, and was certainly a better player than RJ Barrett this year, and I think there's an argument he's going to be a better player than RJ Barrett next year, he's 33 years old. So you're when you're going up by 11 years, because RJ's 22, right? I think. I love Bogdanovich. Bogdanovich is a great player. He's exactly what the Knicks need. He's awesome. But I don't know. I don't see it. I don't see it happening. But I think he makes sense for them in a vacuum as a player, putting aside his age. Jason M with another one. You may have sold me on KP. Can sell it as a big move. Is that their big move of the offseason? I gotta tell you, wouldn't shock me. Wouldn't shock me. The problem with KP is, again, it's a lot of money. So you look at a team like the Wizards, you look at a sign and trade. What do they need? They need a starting point guard to play alongside Bradley Beal. Now, Bradley Beal is kind of almost a combo guard. I mean, he has played point guard for them at times in the past couple of years. So the ball's going to be in Bradley Beal's hands a lot. So you don't need like a quote-unquote true point guard. Guess who fits that description and has said he wants to start and is about to get paid a lot of money, ostensibly to be Jalen Brunson's backup? It's Emmanuel Quickley. What else happens in that trade is, like, again, I'm not saying I would do that trade, to be very clear. But, like, are the Wizards looking to do, and that's the other part of it, right? Is like they already, like, you want to, okay, so you're trading for KP, so you got to send out Mitchell Robinson, right? The Wizards already have Mitchell Robinson, or a type of Mitchell Robinson type in Gafford. Now, maybe they like Robinson a lot better than Gafford. I don't know. They paid Gafford a lot of money. I think there's a year or two left on that deal. So, like, do they want Mitch? Like, it's Quickly and Mitch, and you're still not up to enough money. So you're probably going to have to use Fournier's expiring. And is there going to be a pick or picks involved in that? You get the 8th pick involved somehow. Maybe you send the other part of it that's interesting is you have this Wizards pick. The Knicks have this Wizards pick that if you trade the Wizards pick there, that opens up back to Washington. That opens up their possibility to do some kind of a much bigger trade unencumbered in terms of their picks. I don't know. I don't think it's nuts. El Coriano 11. And by the way, everything I just said about like potentially sending Emmanuel Quickley to Washington, Emmanuel Quickley is freaking awesome. And he was the best, I think, two-way player on the Knicks this year. He was the glue that held them together. The on-off stuff is real. He did make them that much better. He is that valuable to their team, especially on defense, but on offense as well. Like, if they send out Emmanuel Quickley in a trade for anyone, they're going to have to figure out how to replicate what he does. And it's not easy to replicate what that dude does. So, like, again, I get why everybody's saying, like, just run it back. Run it back, run it back, run it back. This team works the way it is. I think there's some credence to that. And if you give up pieces on this team, how are you replacing what those pieces do? Just to be very clear. But, again, you got to give to get. El Coriano 11. Randall, RJ, 2 protected firsts for OG and Siakam. Oh, my goodness. Well, you're not getting it for 2 protected firsts. I'll tell you that right now. What is that team? Brunson, OG, and Siakam. That's man. Is that a title team? I don't think so. It's a very good team, and they're good. I mean, man. I think you might have broke my brain a little bit on that. It would cost more than that, and like I'm not sure what So the problem there is like the Raptors are doing that trade maybe for RJ, but like are the Raptors still trying to win in that scenario? I guess they would. I mean, they're doing it for the Knicks picks, though. That's why there's none of this protected pick nonsense. That's not getting that done. Yeah, I don't know. What's Toronto thinking there? Is that the best that Toronto could do? It's certainly not the best Toronto could do. They're asking for all kinds of picks. El Coriano signed Dylan Brooks to be part of the mid-level exception. Pass. Hard pass. And I think this is our last one. Foam Dome. Julius quickly and 3 firsts. Not 1, not 2, but 3 for a guy who played how many games this year? And how many games 2 years ago? Or what year did he sit out the whole fucking year? Last year? 2 years? I forget when. Zion. Get Zion into a new situation. Buy low. Take a chance on a superstar. Give the Pels a starting point guard and a reliable scorer. So look, I'm being facetious. If Zion Williamson's on the table, you got to have a meeting, right? As Zach Lowe is fond of saying on his pod, you got to have a meeting about it, right? I am not giving up. I'm assuming you mean 3 unprotected firsts. I can't for that dude. Man, he's got to play basketball. He's just got to play basketball, and yeah. I look. It's not. I'll say this. It's any trade where the Knicks end up with Zion Williamson is by definition not crazy because you're ending up with a guy who is a potentially franchise-changing player. But that ain't buying low. That is not buying low. And boy, you want to talk about taking a risk? I mean, if you do a trade like that, you better have good intel, like really good intel, that a lot of this injury stuff is like not serious. And you also better have good intel that this motherfucker is willing to get in the gym and put down the fucking burrito. Or I don't know, what do they eat down there in New Orleans? There's a lot of good food in New Orleans. But there's a lot of good food in New York too. So Stock Chasers was another one. Randall for Zion straight up. Yeah, I don't think the Pels are doing that one, unfortunately. That I do. Anyway, okay, I'm out of here. I think I went too long, but that not the first time, won't be the last. Thanks for tuning in. Remember, like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications. If you're listening, please leave. There you go, Andrew. Please leave a 5-star rating and a review. Let's go Knicks. I'll talk to you guys soon. Peace out.